Two men accused of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from ATMs across the country, including 4 in our area, have been sentenced to prison. The judge in the case says the crimes showed sophistication and planning. They were also violent. Fox 12's Leah Kamana has the details.
The two suspects were identified as part of a robbery ring operating across the country, with the two men targeting 5 banks in 5 different states in a span of 8 months, stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. First, the suspects would disable the ATM machines. Then, when the technician showed up to fix it, they would threaten or assault them to steal the cash containers from the ATM.
Well, this is video we received from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington. You can see the two suspects, Amon Hogg and Daquan Cole's body, assaulting a technician and forcing them to give them the money from inside the ATM. 23-year-old Hogg was sentenced yesterday in U.S. District Court in Seattle to 9 years in prison. He pleaded guilty in February to 4 counts of bank robbery and 2 counts of attempted bank robbery. 24-year-old Cole's body was sentenced earlier this month to 10 years in prison. Here's a look at the locations in our area where ATMs were hit. On or around Christmas Day 2024, the two suspects hit Bank of America ATMs in Battle Ground and Vancouver, Washington. Before that, they disabled an ATM in Renton, Washington. Then, in March of 2025, the two returned to the Pacific Northwest and robbed a Bank of America ATM in Redmond, Washington. Fast forward to June 2025, the men traveled to Oregon, disabling ATMs in Tigard and Hillsborough. While here, they also robbed an ATM customer who had just used a different machine. In between each of those hits in the Pacific Northwest, Cole's body and Hogg were connected to cases in Phoenix, Arizona, Houston, Texas, South Portland, Maine, and Jackson, Mississippi. They were finally arrested during a traffic stop in Mississippi, where police found stolen firearms and significant amounts of cash. Following yesterday's sentencing, First Assistant U.S. Attorney Neil Floyd said, quote, "These two young men will spend their 20s in prison for their violent attacks driven by greed. Each was involved in brutal beatings of ATM technicians, and neither slowed down when confronted by police."
The sentencing in Seattle resolves the cases in all of the states: Washington, Oregon, Arizona, Texas, Maine, and Mississippi. Both men agreed to pay restitution to the victims of $768,900. Reporting in studio, Leah Kamana, Fox 12 Oregon.